Welcome to video 2 in your introductory series on how to be a natural, smooth, relaxed seducer. In this video, I want to dig deeper into the themes of social anxiety and also looking at the choices that you have in terms of meeting women. Because the reality is that for the vast majority of men and women on this planet, the way that they hook up with their partners is simply through their extended social circles, which means that most people date people because they met someone through a friend of a friend, because they bumped into someone at their university course. Very occasionally there's some serendipitous situation, which is the themes that you'll see in romantic comedies where Hugh Grant stumbles into a lady and spills coffee on her, and then she's like, oh, and he's like, oh, I'm so sorry, and then she's like, oh, that's all right, and then somehow they hook up because of that. That's a really bad message to be sending men and women about the likelihood of meeting the one or meeting a compatible partner, waiting for fate or some circumstance to bring you together, because you can be waiting a very long time to find someone under those circumstances. So for the vast majority of people, what this means is that even though you may be living in a vast metropolis such as this, which is 1.5 million people in this city, or maybe a much larger city, most people are in practical terms living in a small village. What that means is that even though there may be hundreds of thousands or millions of people around them, they go about the same routines day to day. They visit the same coffee shop, go to their workplace, get on their public transportation, drive their car, and they interact with more or less the same people. So they interact with the shop clerk, but only in a socially scripted way. They interact with the people who are in their course or in their office, and then they interact with their friends. And most people's friendship group consists of the people that they got together with during their high school or university years, when people were young and social and put in social situations through their circumstances, let's say through university social groups, for example, and they build their social circle, and then coming out into the workforce and over time, their social circles shrink gradually as people peel off, as people couple up. And this is very common. I see this with my clients all the time. Most of my clients are late 20s to late 30s, and even though they may have had a pretty vibrant social world in college, they find themselves in situations where that gets smaller and smaller. And then how do they meet women? Maybe back in college you did meet girls because you were going out to college drinking nights or you're part of various social clubs, and so you're meeting people just by passively almost, that the environment was providing people for you. But what happens when you enter the workforce, or when you move to a new city, for example? How do you start your social circle again, and how do you date new women? Well, the answer these days that most people come up with is swiping on that goddamn app, Tinder or some equivalent. Using dating apps is the worst and most demoralizing thing that a single man can do. I've done videos on this and experiments on this in the past, and I've experimented with these kinds of apps all around the world in dozens of cities. And the results are always humiliating. Because the reality is most women don't really want to meet a man through a dating app unless they're going to date up, right? Because you can have a girl who's very unattractive, and if she wants to get laid tonight, she can swipe a guy of almost any attractiveness, because men will fuck almost anyone, and she will be able to get laid. But in terms of who she's going to be going out with and dating, most women treat those kinds of applications simply as validation. It's a video game where she gets to go like this and have someone somewhere in her city or in the world send her a message, which is that I find you attractive, I find you appealing, you're sexy, you're valuable, you're significant, you matter. And for anyone who's sat there going like this, like I've tried, for minutes or an hour on end, only to get the match of some girl that you would be like, I wouldn't even look twice at that girl in a bar. This is a wake-up call, hopefully, to you to recognize that this is not an effective strategy. Right? The new modern age of technology, although it gives us all sorts of advantages and ways to communicate, also separates people. And the reality is, if you want to have choice in your dating life, if you want your next girlfriend to be a girl that you chose out of various options, that is very beautiful, that has high self-esteem, that is an interesting, intelligent girl who adores you and respects you, then you're not going to find her on a dating application. You're definitely, or very unlikely, to find her through your social circle, because remember, it's a village. How many potential mates do you know right now? How many potential women do you know that you could possibly date? Unless you're very, very well connected, the answer is probably 1, 2 to 5 girls that are possible. Maybe she's my next possible one. That are possible prospects. And out of those, how many of those girls think you are a possible prospect? Maybe 1 if you're lucky. And this is the reality of how most men approach their dating life. They wait for somebody to come into their sphere, to their social sphere, that in terms of an area where they don't need to go and do a cold approach on a stranger. They wait for someone to come into that sphere, and then gradually over time they try to be friendly to that girl and insinuate themselves into her life, and eventually maybe ask her out. And look, this can work. I mean, most relationships started like that. Yeah, people do hook up in this way. But what it means is that people are hooking up from a pool of 1 to maybe 10 people choices. Do you think you're going to find the girl of your dreams by some random amazing piece of luck just through that? Maybe you will get lucky. Of course, it can happen, and it has happened. But I know for myself, when I first started really looking critically at my own dating strategies, I had to come to these realizations and realize that no matter how cool my social circle was, it was not enough of a sample size to bring me the kinds of women that I really wanted. And I even experimented with creating really cool social scenes. I was a musician who started a band and then started putting on band nights, and then got involved in promotions, and drew in different types of interesting people, and I was a high value man in a certain scene. And yeah, I did get laid because of that, but I still got nowhere near the success, nowhere near the choice that I got on the very day that I started cold approaching. And I remember it when I was 26 years old. If you've come to this website and you've signed up for this course here, you're at least thinking in these terms, right? Because guys who deny this as a potential reality, they don't get this far. But you've come this far and you've decided that you want to have some choice, that you want to learn some of the processes that make a man attractive. You want to possibly unlearn some of the mindsets and the behaviors that you've been brought up with, that you've been conditioned to have, in order that you can have exceptional women in your life. So the first thing that you really need to grapple with and get a hold of is this concept that there is no substitute for going and approaching strangers. And it doesn't always mean on the streets, although the streets to me is the best way to practice because there are so many options out there. Walking down the street of any major city in the world, there will be dozens, if not hundreds, of beautiful women that you'll pass in the day. And each one of those is an opportunity to practice your skills and very potentially to start something amazing with a woman that there's no way you could have met through this or through waiting for her to appear in your social circle. However, the skill of cold approaching extends to almost any scenario. There are plenty of opportunities where where you have a warm approach situation. You're at a party where you maybe know the host and the girl clearly knows the host. You're at some kind of event. You're in some kind of situation where a whole bunch of people have gathered together to have a shared experience, let's say like a concert or a market or a festival, something like that, where people are coming out to socialize, to experience, rather than to just charge through their day and get from their car to their office. So there are certain circumstances where people will be in a better mood. You know, people are hanging out on a beach. That's a great place to talk to girls because they're there to relax. Whereas in the middle of a busy street, they're often there to get off the street to get to their next thing. So cold approaching is we mostly apply it by running up and down streets and finding places like this where people are congregating and looking at stuff. But understand that the skill of cold approach is transferable to so many more scenarios. Once you learn it, going to the airport is a different experience for you because you realize that, every type of person goes to the airport. It's actually one of the rare spaces where very beautiful women can be alone because they're getting on a flight and they're going somewhere. It's a great opportunity to meet somebody. You know, just going into the post office or going about your daily business suddenly becomes a world of opportunity. And that's what we at The Natural Lifestyles really push and encourage, is not necessarily to go out to nightclubs 5 nights a week to get good at game, I'm 37 years old now. Most of my coaching crew are in their late 20s to 30s. Most of the guys that we work with are more introverted, intelligent, professional guys who, they have busy lives, they have a lot of obligations, and they can't afford to and don't wish to go out to trashy nightclubs on a Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday night in order to talk to drunken girls. Most of what we do and most of what we teach is day game. And not, as I said before, not just on the streets, in all sorts of scenarios. But ideally, I think the best and most effective way to learn seduction is to be able to go about your normal day, going to work, going to the shops, checking out your city, relaxing with friends, doing all the stuff that you would normally do, and then seeing opportunities, seeing a girl and go, wow, that's a beautiful woman, she's my type, I want to go over there and speak to her, and being able to have the tools necessary to make that happen. Right, so that's the first thing to take from this video today, is that there is no alternative, in my opinion, unless you want to throw huge amounts of money at girls and be their sugar daddy, or you want to use some kind of matchmaking service, which again, all of these things still are very, very limited. You're only going to find girls who want to use you for money, or girls who've signed up for a matchmaking site. There are so many lonely, bored, horny, awesome girls out on the streets who want to hook up, but they don't get the opportunity to. I talk to women all the time about their dating lives, and they constantly tell me that they've gone through periods where they've had many months single. Even the most beautiful and appealing women have had months alone, because a lot of these girls don't want to go out to clubs. They did that when they were 18, 19, 20. They had that experience, and now they're 23 or whatever, and they're interested in yoga and healthy eating, and they've got busy lives, and they don't want to meet guys in those trashy situations, so they're waiting, just like you are waiting. And once you start to bridge that gap, walk over there and just say fucking hi, then magic starts to happen. So if you are to accept and intellectually understand that learning how to go and approach strangers is a good thing, why is it, and I'm sure you've thought about this before, why is it that guys don't do it? Well, the answer boils down to this dreaded social or approach anxiety, which is that a guy sees a girl in some scenario, he wants to go and speak to her, and yet he doesn't, because somewhere inside him, something freezes up. There is a physical reaction, there's an emotional reaction, and there's an intellectual interpretation which says, okay, I'm feeling tense, I'm feeling nervous, I don't know what to say, that girl over there, she looks busy, maybe she's got a boyfriend, she'll probably hate me. If I go over there and talk to her, it's probably going to be like last time I tried that when I got embarrassed, or I'm going to choke, I'm not going to know what to say. All of these things start running inside your head. I'm sure you're familiar with some of these kinds of internal narratives or something similar. And so what happens is a guy gets triggered, gets activated. His physicality, his emotions, and his mind start all working together in a negative way, negative self-coaching, and then you feel like, oh, I've got approach anxiety. I've got social anxiety. Before the girl was there, I was in a balanced state, she appeared, and I lost control, and now it's too late. And so therefore, what does the man do? He simply does not take any action. And this can continue literally for years, or if not a lifetime. And the result of it is that it robs you of your opportunities. It robs you of your choices, and it robs you of beautiful, amazing love affairs that you could bring into your life. Currently, I have a girlfriend. I've been together with her for nearly 5 years. And I met her on the streets. She was standing at a traffic light. I turned and I looked at her, and I reached over and I said, hi there. And out of that simple action came the most important relationship that I've had in my life to date. And sometimes I think about it with this shudder. I think, what if I just didn't say hi? What if I let that feeling that I had in that moment of like, there's a hot girl there, should I talk to her? I had that feeling in that moment. And but luckily, not luckily at all actually, but as a result of the many years of training that I had before that, where I'd approached, I don't know, hundreds if not thousands of women, of all the sexual experience that I'd had, all the seduction experience I'd had, it meant that when that girl was there, I knew more or less what to do, and I knew how to deal, most importantly, with my internal state changing and starting to feel a little bit strange. If I'd have just went, no, I'll talk to the next one, I would have missed out on one of the most important relationships of my entire life. And the reality is that you have missed out on those. In fact, you're missing out on them every single day. When you're a single man walking around the streets, seeing girls, someone in amongst that crowd would have been perfect for you. Someone who would have been devoted and love you, who would have given you amazing blowjobs and incredible sex and possibly threesomes. All those things are possible if you can step out and just fucking say hello. So it's really important that we learn some methodology, some techniques to be able to get over this approach anxiety. So the first thing that I want to tell you about it is that it's not really anxiety. It's not a real fear. There are some people who have clinical social anxiety disorders, but most men who are worried about talking to girls don't. What they do, unfortunately, is that they place labels and meanings on feelings inside their body as negative and insurmountable, when in reality, they are neutral. So let me explain that in more detail. If you think back to a time when you saw a girl, you wanted to speak to her, and you didn't because this approach anxiety or tension or nervousness arose, think for a moment, what did that physically feel like? Because any kind of nervousness is not just an idea, right? We don't think we're nervous, we feel we're nervous. And so typically, when someone is getting nervous or anxious, there's a whole lot of associated physical feelings, such as butterflies in the stomach, sweating of the palms, dryness of your throat, some kind of tremor in your knees, some feeling of jitteriness that makes you want to move in different erratic ways, maybe move too fast or jiggle your keys or pull your phone out multiple times. Your heart rate increases, your breathing increases, you start to sweat a bit more, right? So all of these manifestations and many other ones, depending on the individual, can and do happen in this scenario. Now, what I'd like you to think about next is, can you remember a time when you maybe felt some of those same physical sensations, but you didn't perceive them to be negative? If you think for a little while, you will be able to think about that, because that describes excitement, right? It's the premiere of a movie of Star Wars that you've been waiting for ages. You're standing at the edge of a bungee jumping fucking edge. You're about to meet your mentor at some kind of event. There's all sorts of situations where you feel excited, and the physical manifestation of that is very similar, if not exactly the same, to feeling nervous. Yet one of those things, even though you might have a level of kind of uncertainty and trepidation about it, you're excited to do it and you want to do it. And the other ones you perceive to be negative as anxiety, and you want to move away from that negative tension. So in reality, what's happening when you see a girl that you really want to speak to? Your body activates, right? It goes out of homeostasis. Human beings like to be balanced, they like to be warm, they like to be in predictable situations because it's generally safer for them. But we are also able to, and do, operate in all sorts of unusual situations, because otherwise we would not have left Africa and colonized the entire planet. We wouldn't have done any of the amazing things that humans have done that require bravery, that require stepping into the unknown, that require dealing with a sense of being out of balance, to bring yourself into a place where you feel more at ease in a new situation. That's what seduction is, right? It's stepping out of your comfort zone, boring, predictable and lonely comfort zone of not going and talking to girls you want to talk to going and talking to girls that you want to talk to. And that's going to involve you dealing with these sensations internally. Most of the products that are out there that teach men seduction promise that you will be able to get super hot fucking chicks without having to face any of that nervousness, any of those activated feelings, any of those thoughts. As I said in the previous video, these are lies, this is just marketing. And it's effective marketing because men don't want to necessarily face their fears, they just want to get the prize at the end of facing their fears. I've always told guys that that's just not real. And even if it was realistic, like even if that was a possible thing, you could learn some special technique, hypnotize yourself in a way that you never felt any kind of nervousness or any trepidation, I wouldn't endorse that. I wouldn't teach it even if it was possible. Because I think it's really important and really positive, really powerful to learn to step through your fears. You're not trying to crush elements of yourself internally, or push away your old personality, or bury it under all this positive thinking. It's about being yourself, allowing yourself to feel what you feel, and to be able to move through certain sensations and operate in spite of feeling out of balance. That's what it truly means to step outside your comfort zone. It's that you are in discomfort, but you are comfortable moving in discomfort. That's what I do for a job. I move in discomfort comfortably all the time, and guys that I teach very, very quickly, after a few days of live training or going through an online course with me, can start to develop that, where they're able to move and talk to a girl even though they feel a bunch of sensations going on. Because, back to my original point, it is the meanings that you place upon the feelings that you have in your body that turns it into anxiety. I'll say that again. It is the meanings that you place upon the sensations that you feel in your body and your emotions that define it as anxiety, embarrassment, and all of the negative aspects. Because for me, I've been doing this for many years now. When I see a girl that I want to speak to, or maybe it's say I'm out coaching some students and one of them's asked me to demonstrate, or I'm showing them what to do, I see a girl, I still feel the stuff. Even though I'm a master at this, even though I'm paid to teach this, I still feel things in my body. But I interpret them differently from my student. I interpret them differently from you. You probably interpret those feelings of butterflies and jiggling and tightness in the chest and heart rate increasing as, oh shit, okay, I'm nervous, I'm anxious, therefore this is never going to work. I perceive those feelings as, okay, here we go, it's time to go and meet somebody. Or I'm excited, I'm about to step outside of this normal everyday day and possibly bring something amazing into my life. I've learned over time to shift the meanings from a negative meaning through to a neutral meaning, and now finally through to a positive meaning. You've probably heard of the idea of positive affirmations. Say it's an inner game technique where you talk to yourself in a very positive way to convince your subconscious that you feel great about yourself, and then therefore that should have positive effects in your life. It's not a bad idea, but the problem is that if you say to yourself, if you come from a position of feeling like, I'm nervous, I'm antisocial, I don't know what to say to strangers, girls don't like me, I'm an introverted guy, this is never going to work, okay, so all of these negative self-talks, and then you try to just go the complete opposite and go, all right, I'm going to use positive affirmations, which say, I'm awesome, I'm sexy, girls love me, I know what to say every time, I'm confident, I'm bold, you know, I'm a sexy motherfucker, and I say these things to myself. The problem is if it's on a subconscious level, you don't really believe those, it's not going to work, because you're essentially lying to yourself. And you can say it as loudly and as many times as you want, but you won't really believe it, right? Because you're trying to shift the meanings that you've placed on a subconscious level completely to the opposite, without looking at how how you process the emotions and the feelings that you have, right? Because if you're saying positively like, I'm awesome, I'm sexy, girls love me, everything's fine, I'm doing fine, yet you're feeling all these sensations in your body and you still perceive those things as negative, then you're just layering a positive mask over shit, over negativity. And pretty soon you'll unravel and you'll admit to yourself that you've been lying, and then you'll feel like a fraud, and then you'll want to quit. So what is most important to do is to first go from the negative meanings to a neutral meaning, right? Because that's something that your subconscious can probably handle and accept and agree with, right? So instead of me going from these feelings that I have mean I'm a loser, I'm nervous, the girls, it's never going to work, etc., to simply, these are just sensations that I'm feeling that have activated in my body because I'm about to do something, or I want to do something that I don't usually do. And leave it at that. Right? That's pretty simple, right? So let me say that again so you make sure you've got it. If I feel this butterflies in my stomach, does that mean I have anxiety? Well, it could if I decide it does. What else could it mean? It could mean that I have butterflies in my stomach. Right? If my heart rate is increasing, does that mean I'm anxious and I'm nervous and I have a psychological disorder? Or does that mean my heart's beating faster? Well, you might say, well, yeah, it's beating faster, but it's beating faster because, well, The because is simply because I'm going to do something that's unusual. My body is stepping out of its homeostasis, out of its normal resting state, and it's going into an unusual state because I'm stepping into outside of my comfort zone. And as a result, my body starts doing different things. It activates. It becomes more alert. Right? I start to see the world I become more aware. I hear things more clearly. I feel the temperature more intensely. I'm aware of the person that I'm about to speak to in a more acute way. That's not a bad thing. That's just my body drawing its awareness away from the distractions and the delusions that I usually have as I'm going around living in a daydream to, okay, whoa, I'm in reality now. And that's excellent. Because in order to approach effectively, you do need to be in a state of awareness. And this is what I teach in my system, the 5 principles of natural seduction. The first principle is awareness, right? Learning to become aware of your physical sensations, of your emotional state, of your mental state, of the environment around you, of your posture, of your body language, of your breathing. All those things are the foundations for creating presence and charisma. Those are the things that have a powerful impact on somebody when you meet them. If you've ever met anybody that you perceive to be very charismatic or sexy or influential, sure, there may have been some external markers of like what they were wearing or the way people were treating them, but one-on-one, the thing that has the effect is their level of acute awareness and their ability to be present with you. Someone who's distracted off in the clouds or too much in their own head or too self-centered and narcissistic, even though they might be kind of impressive people or they might be confident people, you won't feel their charisma so much because they're not engaging with you and they're not in a bubble with you. That's probably my superpower. That's probably the biggest secret that I have in terms of why I'm very successful with women, is that I practice meditation and awareness for a long, long time to come to a point where when I lock in with a girl, she feels like nothing else exists. She can feel that I'm 100% there with her, looking her deep in her eyes, feeling her, holding a space for us to communicate in. And whether or not she decides she's romantically interested in me, she will respect me. She will feel my presence, feel my masculinity, and she's much more likely to respond to it. So how do you do this? How do you shift from this negative meanings placed upon physical sensations to a neutral feeling? You may have heard the phrase at some point to get out of your head. When people are unaware, when people are stressed out, when people are feeling anxiety, they're inside their own minds, thinking often in circular ways, having the same kinds of thoughts running around and around in circles. And the thing is that you can't think your way out of your head, right? You can't think more in order to stop thinking. So the way that you get out of your head is very, very simple. It is to get into your body. And what that means is to simply shift the point of awareness and focus away from somewhere inside your brain to some point inside your body. And this is the kind of foundational or key understanding that helps a person to start meditating. Because meditation is not an intellectual exercise. It's not thinking about any particular thing. That is imagination, that is concentration, that's intellectualization, which has its place and has its benefits. But if we want to learn to be in more presence, to be in more flow, and to be able to get over these meanings that we've placed upon the sensations, then we need to be able to step into our bodies, to observe what's going on inside our bodies. That's the first thing. And the second thing is to learn not to react to those. So that, in my mind, is the definition of meditation as far as I understand it and as far as I've taught it, is that it is a redirection of focus away from the brain somewhere inside your body and coming to peace, balance, or equanimity with the sensations that you're feeling, right? Because I can concentrate, I could hit my finger with a hammer and I would be out of my head and into this point on my finger very quickly. I wouldn't have to think my way there. I wouldn't have to sit down and meditate. I would be very consciously aware of the screaming agony in my fingertip. Now, would I be meditating in that moment if I'm just screaming my head off and there's blood pouring out of my fingertip? Probably not, unless I was some very stoic Zen master who was able to observe that sensation in his finger and to be able to not react by screaming and shouting and jumping up and down, but to be able to just observe it as pure sensation. And I've seen that kind of thing in Shaolin Temple in China when I was studying Kung Fu there many years ago. Monks doing things that were extremely painful, and I had practice with this as well. I didn't go as extreme as them. Saw guys, getting kicked in the nuts and having spears pushed into their throats and all sorts of very extreme physical exercises. I did some of them, but not the most extreme ones. But what made those men able to endure the pain was not just willpower. It was not just gritting and using toughness to get through it. It was an observation of the pain as a sensation without meaning attached to it. Now, that's a very difficult thing to do with a very intense pain, but it's actually quite a simple thing to do with a fairly neutral sensation. Remember, the sensations we're talking about are butterflies in our stomach, right? That's not screamingly painful. That's not having an appendix burst. That's just feeling some bubbling sensations, all right? What are the other ones? Feeling heat and kind of a compression in our throats. That's a common one that guys will feel that they associate as a negative anxiety. So, but really, that's just a fairly neutral sensation when we take the meanings away from it. Because if you were just walking down the street and you suddenly felt tightness and a bit of heat in your throat, you wouldn't freak out. You wouldn't think that you were anxious. You were just like, oh, that's a strange sensation. And then it passes 10 seconds later and you would think nothing of it. We have those kinds of sensations changing in our body all the time. You'll have a little cramp in your stomach or tingling in your arms, and you might think, oh, maybe that means I have cancer, but then you're like, okay, nah, it's just something, and then it passes. That's what's happening when you have your approach anxiety, but it's all the meanings we place on it that makes it so painful. So to get out of our head into our body, and a very practical way to do that is simply to feel your feet on the ground as you walk. So right now, as I'm speaking to you, I have a general idea of what it is that I want to speak about, but I'm not following a script. I'm making it up as I go along, as I do most of my coaching, based upon my experience. And the rest of my awareness is in my body. Right now I'm feeling my heel roll onto my toe. I'm stepping now on pebbles and I can feel the pebbles through my shoes. I'm also aware of the fact that it's cold. Now I can feel the temperature on my face. I can feel the breeze blowing my hair. I can feel the difference between the heat in my fingertips and the heat inside my chest, which is covered in clothing. So I'm consciously aware of multiple things that are happening to me physically at the moment, which helps me to stay present and to be able to deliver a very clear and precise message to you right now. That's the same thing that I'm doing, that I teach students to do when they're approaching girls. There's no point trying to think of exactly the right thing to say or memorizing pickup lines or stories that make you sound cool, because even if they are the coolest stories, even if you learn to practice them enough that you deliver them with some kind of ability to convince the person that it's real, it won't come across as real because you won't be present. You'll be in your mind thinking through intellectually how to achieve your goal. When I'm standing in front of a woman, there are certain things that I'm working on, for sure. Being natural with women and using natural style seduction doesn't just mean just have no game plan at all and just like there's some vague feeling of like just do it and just be natural. That's not very useful to a student. In our courses and in our online courses and our live courses, we teach frameworks, we teach how to qualify, we teach how to connect, how to flirt. We teach that there are certain times when it's good to escalate, certain times when there's not. We teach people how to deal with a woman's objections. We teach how to close or get numbers in a right way, how to text, what makes a good date. There's all sorts of elements that are pieces of information and knowledge that you need to understand because they're based on the patterns that women have, what is most likely to work. But these are not rigid rules, and they can't be plotted out and planned. It is underlying all of the technique, all of the methodology must be presence and awareness, because that's the thing that the woman's going to feel. And when you're in a present state, that's when you are most likely to be natural. That's when you are going to be expressing yourself authentically. And that is when the woman is going to feel the real you communicating with her, which means that she's much more likely to reveal the real her, and then you're able to have a real connection. So the simple awareness or meditation method that I want you to take out of this speech today is to get yourself out of your head and into your body. As you're walking down the street, stand up tall, hold yourself at eye line, so don't be, collapsed down in your own introspective world, but stand up straight, look out at the world, make eye contact with girls as you walk down the street, and then feel your feet. As you step, feel your feet touch the ground. Feel the temperature touching your skin. Feel the sun on you. Feel the breeze on you. Feel the snow or the rain. Feel what your environment is doing to your body. Feel the touch of the fabric on your skin. Go deeper inside your body as well as you're walking along, particularly if you see a girl and you're like, okay, I want to talk to that girl, and you notice, all right, my body activates. Stuff's happening in my body, and notice the way your mind wants to jump up and give it a label. There's my anxiety, there's my terror, there's my fear. No, those are just labels that you're placing on it. That's ways that your subconscious is trying to protect you from having your ego damaged if the girl tells you to go away. That's all it is. It's a self-preservation, an ego preservation reaction within your mind that does not assist you in starting conversations with pretty girls. What does is he's noticing, jumping up into those voices. Don't try and squash them or replace them with like, no, I feel super positive and I love myself and girls love me. Your mind will know that that's bullshit. Don't worry about what the chatter in your mind. It'll do its own thing. It'll keep chattering and eventually it'll quieten down. But what you can do is draw your attention away from there down to your feet, into your stomach. Feel, okay, there's bubbling in my stomach. What does it feel like? Feels like nervousness. No, that's a judgment. That's a meaning. Forget the meaning. What does it objectively feel like? Just if you were like you're a scientist, just investigating certain physical phenomena. Okay, it feels like bubbling or pressure, or there's like movement, or there's like kind of a tension, or okay, there could be all sorts of ways that it manifests. And observe that from like a scientific neutral position. You feel compression in your throat. Okay, you're feeling a compressing feeling. You're feeling heat somewhere. All right, notice the temperature. All right, so start to analyze these sensations from a perspective of neutrality, of objectiveness, of equanimity. Remembering that what I said meditation is moving your focus in certain directions and being balanced. Second point is being balanced, equanimous, objective about what you're observing. Okay, so you observe the feeling and you don't get all angry about the feeling or get all scared or bombastic or anything. You just go, all right, there's that set of sensations, I'm going to observe it. And what is the nature of all things in the universe? They change. They manifest, they reach some kind of peak, and then they shift into something else and change. Those sensations that you feel will come, they'll reach a peak, and then they'll start to shift and change and dissolve into something else. When I'm in an interaction with a girl, I'll go through various stages where maybe the first point, I'm feeling quite intense physical sensations and an emotional reaction to it. My mind wants to put some labels on it, and I go, okay, just bring myself back to observing. Okay, I can feel the pressure in my chest. I can feel my knees shaking a little bit. I can feel my heart rate increasing. All right, can I still talk to a girl when my heart's beating a bit fast? Yep. Can I still tell a girl that she's beautiful on the streets if I've got gurgling in my stomach? Sure I can. If I decide that it's terror and anxiety, probably I can't, because then I'm trying to fight against myself. But if I can just accept, okay, this is how I'm feeling right now, and that's okay, I can still have a conversation with a girl. I can even go so far as to call it out, because often the most awkward thing is when someone's trying to pretend to not be awkward. If I'm talking to a girl and I feel my body is starting to lose control, I can even say that to her. I can say, listen, you're very beautiful and my heart's beating really fast, so I'm having a hard time concentrating. Just that, admitting that, calling it out, is often an amazingly liberating moment, because instead of you trying to pretend to be perfect, instead of you defending your ego to the death, you just admit that you're flawed, that you can be nervous, you can not know what to say, you can be imperfect, because women are not looking for perfect, smooth supermen, they're looking for real men. And if you can be real with yourself by observing things and just going, yep, this is how it is currently, yet I still wish to continue and follow my destiny and create change and bring opportunities into my life, you're going to need to accept that all along that way you'll be up and down in terms of feeling confident or feeling anxious, in terms of being in flow and out of flow, in terms of feeling super smooth to feeling stilted and robotic. those things will keep coming and going throughout your seduction journey and any social interactions that you want to improve and get better at. So please take that away with you as you now go about trying to approach girls, or at the very least, standing up tall and looking people in the eyes and smiling and waving. And notice how your mind wants to jump up and create all sorts of meanings, and notice how you don't have to follow those meanings, that you can bring yourself back down to observation and balance, objectivity, and very soon you'll start to gain better control over your state. You'll be able to operate in spite of feeling these feelings in your body. You won't perceive them to be so dangerous or negative anymore. You'll just perceive them to be just one part of the ever-changing, oscillating flow of life and social progression. So that's all we have time for. I hope you enjoyed this second video. Stay tuned. We'll see you in the next video.